We're here with Kathy Navajas, Abby Austin interviewing her. Navajas, I'm sorry, for the Holy Trinity interview project. How you doing?
Good.
Good. All right, let's go ahead and start. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your background and what brought you to Gainesville and to Holy Trinity?
Right. I was born in New York City, and I lived there until I was about 28. I worked as a small engine mechanic for many years up there, and at some point in my life, I just started to wonder if what else one could do with one's life other than work and pay the rent and, and that's all. And I thought, they're going to write on my grave, she never was late for work. And so I had to work because I was sort of a working class person. I had to work so much, and I thought there has to be something more in life than this. And so I met people from Gainesville through some friends, and they seemed to have an enormous amount of free time, and that really made an impression on me. And so I came down to visit Gainesville, and I really liked it here. I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to be in a place where it clicks and you go, oh, this is the place for me. I liked the weather, I liked the culture, I liked the lands, the plants and everything, and I liked the fact that people didn't have to work so hard and they could have free time, which no one in New York has free time. So I decided to leave New York, and I moved here. I think when you grow up in a place like New York, where everybody comes to, it never occurs to most people to leave. And so I was really excited. I left. I traveled around Europe by myself on a bicycle for a year, and then I moved to Gainesville when I came back, and that was in 1984.
Can you tell me a little bit about being in, how the experiences in New York and both Europe, shaped you to who you are and your role?
Well, I learned that there were many ways to live a life, and that some of the ways that people made choices about what they did and what they gave themselves to were inspiring and risk-taking. When I grew up, sort of a working class Roman Catholic family, and we just worked hard and paid our taxes and did everything right, and and so I was sort of programmed to do that. But then I realized there's all these other choices that one could make that are more creative or more about doing things in the world. And I also was a community activist in those years in the feminist movement and the gay rights movement in New York. And so when I went to Europe and I saw all of that, and this was, I was a child of the 60s, the whole civil rights movement and stuff, so I have a very strong sense of social justice. And it was freeing. It was freeing to me, and it sort of gave me permission to have, to be rather than to do. To just, to be still, to watch, to observe, to see how and to stay open, and sort of come out of what I was taught and be open to other possibilities.
How do you think that translates into your the way you teach and also your involvement with the work in Cuba?
Well, I mean, so I'm not a native speaker of Spanish. My mother is Cuban, but she never taught us Spanish growing up. And so I have learned Spanish exactly the way my students are learning Spanish, in classes and, with some kind of heart connection to people who are native speakers. But, so I learned Spanish by traveling and living abroad in other places, and and pushing through that fear of the frustration, fear about the intense longing to communicate something of who we are. So every question that my students have is a question that I have had. And so I know exactly where they're going to trip. I know exactly what their challenges are. And, I think also my background in New York as a working person, I really value hard work. There are some people who have talent, but they don't work hard. There are others who have no talent, but they work really hard. And, so I really respect students who work hard, no matter how far they get. And I also, those many experiences of feeling like other, for any number of reasons, whether I'm an American outside the country or a gay person in this country, I never feel at home anywhere. And so, but I managed to sort of make connections everywhere with people because there's no one place where I totally fit, and so I think, there's a lot of talk in language teaching about about, creating a comfortable environment for language learners. And I think, language learning is inherently edgy. So the sooner you get comfortable with being uncomfortable, the more you'll learn. There's a kind of alertness that happens when you're a little bit scared and a little bit nervous. And so we learn more than if we were just everybody's shining love on us all the time, which hardly happens anyway. So, I think I bring that into, and tremendous optimism that you can do it. That you can, a lot of students think, okay, if I didn't start learning Spanish when I was, 11 years old, I'll never learn it. And it's so not true, because I was 34 when I started. And, I still make mistakes in Spanish, and so, it's not the end of the world. But the important thing is to reach for the other person in their language and make that cultural bridge. So,
can you tell me about the activities you're involved in during your time at Holy Trinity?
Well, I'm involved in everything, really. I came from a background of community activism, and so, it was a community activism that had, a certain ideology, but, it didn't, I was not always happy with the way we treated each other, and so, and I grew up very Roman Catholic, very devout as a child, and, as I got older, I wanted to combine those things, and so, and I can talk more later about what brought me to the church, but, I've been involved in outreach, a lot of outreach. We're a downtown church. We do a lot of outreach to the working poor and the homeless in the downtown area. So I've been involved in street-side breakfast. I was the chair of outreach for 3 years. The Cuba committee is part of the outreach program. I've been on the vestry now for 4 years, which is about the governance of the church. Unlike Roman Catholic churches where the priests and the diocese make all the decisions, the Episcopal Church, it's the laity that makes decisions, and the laity are considered ministers of the church. They're doing ministry in the church and in the community. The only thing we don't do is the liturgy, the blessing of the elements and that sort of stuff. And I take that really seriously, that, it's not just about what we believe, it's about what we do. In fact, it's more about what we do than what we believe, that I think our beliefs come through in what we do. So I've been involved in IHN, the Interfaith Hospitality Network, when we have families come and spend the night for a week at our church, and then they move on to another church. I've done prairie cleanups with the Earth Stewardship Committee out on the prairie, where we get out there and we pick up all the garbage that comes through the water systems in Gainesville. I've done a lot of the contemplative practices, like centering prayer, because that's really the grounding that I have in my faith, the quiet time. I'm such a busy person, and so it's very hard for me to just be still, but I can get pretty burnt out if I just keep going. So it's the stillness, centering prayer, and, just the quiet times. When I was a kid, probably the most intense experience of well-being was after confession, when I would go to confession and I was in the church by myself, and the light was coming through the stained glass windows, and it was quiet, and I would just have this sense of well-being, that God loved me just the way I was, and and so I try to look for that again, and that's not in like the doing part of the church; it's in the being part. So,
what is it about Holy Trinity that made you accept the call to come here?
Well, it's interesting, that language, to accept the call. We usually use that language when we're talking about inviting like a priest to come and work with us. But it's true that, I do think that we accept the invitation. When I was about, sort of in my mid-40s, I was in graduate school up at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, and being around that many smart, privileged people made me so insane that I thought, oh my God, I need religion again, because when you're around lots of people for whom it's all about them, and there's not very much service involved, it's really like in service of the ego, and they know a lot, but they don't believe very much. I just thought, oh my God, what am I becoming here? Do I want to do this? And Baltimore is full of churches, and I realized one day I had forgotten how to pray, because I had fallen away from organized religion for many, many years. And I also think it's like kind of regular for people in their mid-40s as they get older to sort of want a kind of spiritual dimension, especially if they once had one as a child. And so I started seeking. I was terrified I was going to have to do Christianity again because, it's got a hard history, Christianity, and so how to make peace with that. And so, when I came back here, there's all these sort of groovy New Age and religions and stuff like that. And I tried all that, but none of it felt quite right to me. It didn't work for me. It didn't give me the kind of connection with the divine that I wanted. And so I made my way to St. Augustine over here and got connected with a group of centering prayer, like meditation. There's a convent over in the northeast near the duck pond called the Senecal Sisters, and they did centering prayer. And through them and, sort of realizing, I might have to do Christianity again because it's what works for me, And so my partner is a cradle Episcopalian. She grew up Episcopalian in California. And so one time when we went up to visit her mother in Blacksburg, Virginia, I said to Lisa, why don't we go to church with your mother? Really, my secret motive was to say, what is this like, And so we did, and I just thought it was amazing. The liturgy is very similar to what I knew growing up. And so when we came back to Gainesville, we went to Holy Trinity to just see what it was like. I think my partner came with me just because she was afraid I was going to lose my mind and become an ascetic in the desert and eating locusts or something. But, I think I was seeking. I was seeking, and God knew that I was seeking, and God sent me to Holy Trinity. He called me there, He sent me there, and that's why I went there. Because I was really longing for, I have the intellectual, I have the social, but I needed the spiritual part of my life developed, and, and God was listening. And so He said, here, go here, they need you. So, and I needed them. But I stayed, so that's why I went, but why I stayed was the amazing welcome that I felt there. This was 2003, just after the Gene Robinson had been ordained and all the craziness about the gay bishop and so forth. And I was only barely aware of that. I had no idea. But, so there we arrive, Elisa and I, and, and everybody is all in an uproar about the gay bishop. And suddenly we were sent to Holy Trinity, and people were amazing. I can remember this older guy leaning out of the pew one day when we came down into church, and he said, I'm so glad you're here. We're not perfect, but we're really trying. And I said, well, this is the place for me because I'm so not perfect and I'm really trying. And so there's this amazing community of people who are really seekers, really trying to, get comfortable in that place of being uncomfortable, and see each person as, an individual, a child of God, rather than just like your category of difference. This person is black, this person is gay, this person is whatever, And so to move beyond, there's a lot of people who are really committed on a spiritual level to moving beyond those kinds of superficial, categories, to see the person and to connect with that person. So that's why I stayed.
Have you faced any challenges since being there in that respect and being welcomed, or found your 60s roots of, you've had to fight for your place to belong, or it's been completely welcome?
Oh, no. I mean, I have a lot of energy for making things happen, and from my years as an activist and just as a pushy New Yorker. And so, I mean, there's always places for people to step in and make things different or better. I mean, not every idea I have is something that gets warmly embraced, but yes, I mean, I have felt so welcomed, and so, I mean, at this point I have to say no to things because I just can't do, I mean, I'm still making a living. There's a lot of people there who are retired and the church is run by this army of 80-year-olds. I don't know what we would do without the 80-year-old women in the church who are like running everything. So, yeah, no, I mean, I have felt very welcomed and very appreciated there. Yeah, I mean, I think there are some people who are uncomfortable with us, but not very many. And even those people, over time, when you treat them and warmly, and it's it changes. It changes. I mean, I think that's the only thing that changes people is the heart connection.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's been wonderful, really. I feel very well supported and these are my people. Does that mean we never disagree? No, but that's the other thing I like about it. You know, there's forgiveness. And people, I mean, I don't always do everything right. Sometimes I shoot my mouth off and, you know, make someone feel bad. But, you know, then I can ask forgiveness. And that's what we do, because it's part of our spiritual practice. So I like that. It's a kind of permission to not be perfect. And to just keep falling and rising, falling and rising. So I like that. I feel well accompanied in the falling and rising and the seeking. You know, so...
what do you see as Holy Trinity's role as a downtown church? You talked a little bit about that already. And how do you see various programs contributing to their role as a downtown church?
Well, you know, our church is, you know, has some diversity around class and color and stuff, but it doesn't, it's a traditional Protestant church. Most of the people are white, middle class people. But, I mean, there is diversity, but, so I'm really proud of them for staying there, staying downtown. It would be much more comfortable, much less challenging to have moved out to the Northwest, which is where most of the people in the church live, after the church burnt down. But they made a commitment to stay downtown, which is a commitment to being uncomfortable, you know, to dealing with, you know, poor people who come to street side breakfast and, you know, people sleeping in the alcove and, you know, and having a presence in the downtown for things like when Terry Jones and, you know, to sort of collaborate with other churches in Gainesville that are taking that kind of a stand. So a lot of the work we do is about that. It's about like street side breakfast, which has been going on for, you know, a million years. People serving breakfast every single Sunday, from 7 to 8. The downtown ministry, which has been going on for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years now. You know, the Cuba committee too. I mean, it depends on how you define community. I mean, it's not downtown, but you know, if you expand your vision to include the larger community, then that's part of that as well. Yeah.
You mentioned the church burning down. I heard you have a personal story with that happening.
Well, I was not involved with the church, but I saw the church burn. I was on the downtown plaza. It was because it was Martin Luther King Day, and there was an event there to commemorate that. And so I saw the smoke coming up, but I was not part of the church then, so it was not particularly meaningful to me.
Is it meaningful to you now in retrospect?
Well, yeah, because it was a huge turning point for our church in so many ways. I mean, I was totally not involved. So, but you know, it's one of those like family events that changes everything. You know, like when somebody dies or when, you know, when there's an illness in the family or something and everything changes and there's a period of reflection. So yes, it was a huge moment of truth for the people in the church who are mostly, you know, people a good deal older than me who were very involved in the church at the time. But it's wonderful to hear them talk about their process and how they move through conflicts and, you know, all the rest of it, and pick some of the liturgical events that happened in the ashes and all the rest of it. So, yeah.
You also mentioned about the Cuban Commission, and specifically, how do the Cuban Commission activities, how do you see them serving the community?
Well, you know, we've been in a companionship relationship with Cuba since 1988 or 89, and, you know, that involves the burning of the church, the Periodo Especial in Cuba after the Soviet Union pulled out, and there was great suffering in Cuba. And, you know, all through all of these years were ups and downs, politics, you know, economics and everything else. And so, you know, there are ways in which they support us during our hard times, and we support them during their hard times. It's a relationship not of mission, because they're already Episcopalians. You know, it's not a relationship of charity, although we do bring them stuff that they need. It's a relationship of friendship, so it's about being in their lives. And it's not just like everybody in Cuba. Like, we don't see all of Cuba. We go to Havana, and then we take one of those ancient cars out to this little town, and we just hang out there in this little, like, one-horse town. And, you know, all we do is talk to people and eat and walk and, you know, and do stuff like that. So it's not, so it's friendship more than anything. And so that's community building. You know, and it's community building over cross-cultural differences as well. When we go there and there's no internet, there's no telephone, there's TV, but such as it is. But, you don't have access to a car. And it's like, all you can do is be there. You can't get on the internet. You can't make a phone call. You can't drive yourself anywhere. So that's a real challenge for many of us who are, kind of in charge of our lives, and we can, do stuff. And so there, especially the people who don't speak Spanish, they go there and they are dependent on other people for everything. So it's a real, I think it serves our community as a practice in humility and dependence, which we're so not very dependent here. We sort of pride ourselves on our independence. So that's a real important spiritual practice for us, and I think it also helps this community to know that we are in relationship. Like we have this big fundraiser, the Gala Cubana, where we just had, over 120 people, probably half of whom were from the community, not from the church, and that was February 9th. And, we hire Gilberto Paz and his group, and it's the best salsa band in Gainesville, and people just have fun. But they also say, so what is this about Cuba companionship, And so, because it's not political, it's very personal. So I think those are a couple ways. So it helps the community here to know that things are happening. There are other churches in Gainesville who are also involved in Cuba, and so we have some contact with them and some collaboration too.
What challenges do you see Holy Trinity facing in the near future? As a downtown church and just in general, and what steps do you see the vestry and the membership taking to address these needs and challenges?
Well, I think that I was saying earlier that we have this little army of elders that are doing everything. And has been doing everything forever. And, they're sort of, they go the way of elders, And so one of my concerns is is how to get younger people to learn those ministries before, they all go their way. And so, like the street side breakfast, for example, which involves picking up pizza from a restaurant every day of the year. Every day of the year, buying stuff, organized scheduling, everything. I'm terrified that the woman who runs it, who's like 84, is just going to go her way before anybody knows what to do. And so I keep pressing her to sort of train us. And so that's one of the concerns I have. I think the younger people, even, and I conclude myself sort of in that group, many of us are working still, and so our time is limited, and so I have some concern about that. And I also have concern that I would like to see a vision in which we're working more with rather than for, so to get some of the people who come to Street Side Breakfast to work with us. That's something I would really like to see happen. The steps that the vestry and the membership are taking to address these needs and challenges are, we've had this big push to welcome people. Episcopals are famous for being like the frozen chosen, so people come into church and you're like, hi, but then you never speak to them again. And you go into coffee hour and you only talk to people that you know. And so, we've had this huge, campaign to get both vestry members and clergy and everybody to, if they see someone they've never laid eyes on before, to welcome them, to take them, to get them involved in the church. When our rector is really good at that, of sort of finding out what people are interested in, what they're looking for, and kind of tell them, here, you can get involved in this and that. And so that's really good, because we need a lot. We need younger people, especially now, with so many young people are not involved in a faith practice. So to get younger families and just younger people and more people and a larger group of people, because, it is a mainline Protestant church that has really evolved tremendously over the last 50 years, and so we're more spiritual now and more overtly and less embarrassed about it. It used to be the place where you'd go to rub elbows to make business contacts. But I think that we have embraced, a traditional spiritual practice and also some new spiritual practices. So and the vestry and everybody supports all of that. So I think that's really healthy, because people come looking for something. They come looking for a community. They come looking for a spiritual practice and a spiritual experience. And so I think that we're realizing that, and which is something many of us want and have, and to sort of bring them into that.
What are your hopes for the future?
Well, I hope that we continue to grow, and especially to expand the kind of diversity in the church, which I think is one of our great riches in this church, is that it's not out in the suburbs and, just one kind of folks come. I think there's a whole bunch of folks, and to sort of help walk people through, what do I do when a homeless person sits down next to me in church? And, and to see that person not just as homeless, but this is, Patrick, or it's, Mary, or whoever it is that we see all the time. So my hope is that we continue to both cultivate our traditions and develop those traditions, and be willing to, have a visible role in that, in Gainesville, and to be courageous and not so embarrassed about, not so shy about what we do, for our connection with God. It's one that the music is wonderful, the ministries are wonderful, but, to not have those become an end in themselves, but a way of serving God in others. Not just, okay, these people need IDs, and so we're going to help them get ideas, but to see them as also children of God that could teach us something.
Have you seen a growth of people of the downtown community, like especially homeless people, being involved in the church? Like, I know you said that's something that you hope for, but have you seen that now happening?
I think that the paradigm that has been in place for many years has been they are the object of our charity, which I don't think is so unusual, but I see that changing. And we have greeters at Streetside Breakfast, so then we stand around and schmooze with them, and we get to know them, and we know their names and that sort of thing. And I had one of the guys living in my shed for 1.5 years, and I learned so much about homelessness from them. I mean, it was, there's electricity, there's a heater and a little microwave out there and everything, but, to sort of make the heart connection with these people that we tend to fear more than anything. And so I think almost everybody that works in the downtown ministry knows every, homeless person in Gainesville. And so when we go out to eat, we don't feel afraid when we go downtown because we know them all. And they know us, And so I think that's starting to happen, but it's just the beginning. I don't know if that's a shared vision either. It's my vision, but, I'm not as afraid as other people are. There's people are afraid of, homeless people. And some of them are worth being afraid of, but, they're also, the ones we're supposed to love, and God said, feed my lambs. So there we have it. I mean, there's not a lot of choice about that.
In this, we've addressed it a little bit. You've talked about faith and how you see, you talked about young people, a lot of young people not having much faith. So in that atmosphere today, what do you think are the challenges facing priests of the church and the church community in reaching out?
The priests. I think, the role of the priests in the Episcopal Church is to support all the members of the church in their ministry. So I think one of the big challenges for them is to do that, to both give us the tools, the spiritual tools that we need to do that, the encouragement to do that, to sort of identify, different talents that people have and different gifts, and to encourage, give us a way to live those out, and then to get out of the way, because it's not really a priest-focused church. It's more of a laity-focused church, which is one of the things I like about it. I feel like we're all doing this together. This is ministry that we all do together. We're all seeking. I think that in a big church like Holy Trinity, where that's so diverse, I think for the priests, the hardest part is probably staying grounded in their own faith. Because it's really hard. There's some really complicated people in church, and they all have, their ideas about what we need to do. And, it's people, it's sort of like money and religion. How you're not supposed to talk about money, sex, or religion. Well, it's because it's really close to the heart. And so people want what they want. And, to be able to conjugate all of that and stay believing in the goodness of people can be a challenge sometimes. So how to renew their own faith so that they can, help us do it too. I mean, that's a really hard job, because there's a lot of people who could just drive you crazy,
What do you see as your role continuing in Holy Trinity in the future is going to develop as?
Well, there are many, many things that I can do in Holy Trinity, and it's. I mean, right now I have a pretty demanding job, but I get really invigorated by trying to be coherent in what we say we believe and how we live it. And that was one of my issues with Catholicism as a kid, the kind of hypocrisy between and I'm not saying all Catholics are hypocrites, but the way I saw it was you said you believed this, and then you'd go into church and then you'd try and kill people getting out of the parking lot in the car because they were like in front of you. Anyway, so how to live the things that we say we believe, and I think there are many, many ways that I can continue to do that through ministry and leadership in the church. I function really well on the parish level. At the diocesan level, there are many, many limits to people who are gay in this diocese, and so I just stay at the parish level, and and I feel really well accompanied by people there, and so it's a church family, and so the diocese is going to do whatever it's going to do, and and then I feel, but my growth is in the parish level, and there's so much more I would like to learn how to do, to be quiet, to be, to have a humble heart, to be optimistic, and so all those old ladies who always say bless his heart, as opposed to saying there's something else that's much less friendly and spiritual, I want to be able to do that with feeling, so. There's a lot to learn.
Okay. That's pretty much everything that I wanted to cover. Is there anything you feel like you haven't said or that you'd like to say about Holy Trinity or your role or any of the programs?
Yeah, I feel so grateful to so many of the people there who have a kind of wisdom and a kind of aliveness and alertness in their spiritual practice. I mean, there are people there who have been practicing Episcopalians for longer than I have been alive. And they're still working it. They're still studying. They're still trying. They're still talking. They're still powerfully involved in discernment and what is, trying to bring together reason and tradition and scripture and, everything. And so I'm so grateful for that because, and for them sharing that with me, because I feel, wow, this is a place where we can really do it. We can really try and be the best people we can be, because for me it's not about belief, it's about how you live that belief. And so that's why I'm really grateful. I'm grateful for their welcome, for their company on the path.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
You're quite welcome.
That's a great interview.
Yeah. You should come visit us sometime. What's your faith tradition?